Hello everyone. In today's video, I bring you a story that will shake your beliefs and make you rethink everything you know about life and spirituality. Let's meet Orion Blackwood, a United States Air Force officer who, after a mysterious collapse, died and had a near-death experience. During this journey beyond life, he met Jesus and discovered the truth behind the divine message, receiving a shocking revelation that completely transformed his existence. So, before we begin, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the notification bell to receive all updates. Now prepare yourself for an exciting and revealing journey. My name is Orion Blackwood, and for a decade, I served as an officer in the United States Air Force, based in Seattle. My life has always been guided by military discipline and a deep-rooted skepticism toward anything that couldn't be explained by logic and science. I grew up in a traditional family in the American Midwest, where I learned early on to value hard work and responsibility. From a young age, I was always fascinated by aviation and space, which led me to join the Air Force right after finishing high school. My military career was marked by dedication and excellence, allowing me to rise quickly through the ranks. At 35, I already held a prominent position at the Seattle Air Base, coordinating crucial logistical operations. My routine was meticulously organized. I woke up at 5 a.m., did rigorous physical exercises, and arrived at the base before 7:30 a.m. My days were filled with strategic meetings, report analyses, and training sessions. In the evenings, I usually relaxed with a good book or by watching documentaries on military history. I was never a particularly spiritual or religious person. My faith was placed in science, technology, and the human capacity to solve problems through reason. If someone had told me a few months ago that I would go through an experience that would completely change my worldview, I probably would have laughed and dismissed the idea as absurd. However, life has a peculiar way of surprising us and challenging our most ingrained convictions. What I am about to share with you is the story of how a single experience turned my world upside down, leading me to question everything I believed in and profoundly transforming my understanding of life, death, and the purpose of our existence. This is my story, told in the most honest and direct way possible. I'm not here to convince anyone or to preach some kind of absolute truth. My goal is simply to share what I lived, in the hope that my experience might, in some way, touch and perhaps even inspire those who hear it. I only ask that you, listener or reader, keep an open mind as I narrate the events that unfolded. For what happened to me challenges not only conventional logic but also many of the beliefs that form the basis of our understanding of reality. It all began on a typical Seattle morning, cold, rainy, and gray. It was a Tuesday like any other, or so I thought. I woke up at 5 a.m., as usual, completed my morning exercise routine, and prepared for another day at the airbase. While having my breakfast, scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, and strong coffee, I felt a slight dizziness. I didn't give it much thought, attributing the discomfort to accumulated fatigue from the intense work of recent weeks. I arrived at the base around 7:15 a.m., greeted my colleagues, and headed to my office. That's when things started to worsen. The feeling of dizziness intensified, and I began to feel a strange tingling in my extremities. I tried to concentrate on work, opening my email and reviewing the previous day's reports, but the letters on the computer screen seemed to dance before my eyes. Suddenly, I felt as if the floor were moving beneath my feet. The office walls began to spin, and a wave of nausea hit me hard. I tried to stand up, thinking of seeking help, but my legs wouldn't respond. My vision began to darken at the edges, as if a black veil were being pulled over my eyes. The last coherent thought I had was, "This can't be happening." Then everything went dark. I don't know how long I was unconscious. The next thing I remember is hearing distant voices and feeling hands touching me. I opened my eyes with difficulty and saw the worried face of Major Ava Reynolds, my direct supervisor. She was kneeling beside me, holding my hand and saying something I couldn't understand. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry, and my tongue seemed too heavy to move. Gradually, I realized I was lying on the floor of my office, surrounded by co-workers and the base medical team. "Stay calm, Orion," I heard Major Reynolds say. "The ambulance is already on its way." As I was placed on the stretcher and taken to the ambulance, my mind was in turmoil. What had happened to me? I, who had always been the epitome of health and discipline, now found myself weak and vulnerable, being rushed to the hospital. During the trip to the base hospital, my thoughts oscillated between concern for my health and frustration at being in that situation. I hated feeling helpless, out of control. As the paramedics monitored my vital signs and asked questions I could barely answer, a sense of fear began to settle in my chest. Something told me this was just the beginning of a journey that would change my life forever. Upon arriving at the base hospital, I was immediately taken to the emergency room. The medical team, led by Dr. Elena Monroe, a professional I knew by sight and respected for her competence, began to conduct a series of exams: electrocardiogram, CT scan, blood tests. It seemed every inch of my body was being scanned and analyzed. Meanwhile, I floated between states of consciousness and unconsciousness. In moments when I was awake, I observed the frantic movement around me, hearing medical terms that meant little to me. Dr. Monroe, with her calm and professional voice, gave orders to the team and occasionally addressed me, asking questions about my medical history and whether I had noticed any unusual symptoms in recent days. Hours dragged on, and with each new test performed, a feeling grew within me that something was profoundly wrong. It wasn't just physical discomfort or mental confusion. There was an unease in my core, as if a part of me knew we were on the brink of something inexplicable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Monroe approached my bedside with an expression that mixed concern and perplexity. "Lieutenant Blackwood," she began, her voice betraying slight hesitation, "we've completed all routine exams and some additional ones. What intrigues us is that we can't identify a clear cause for your collapse." She paused, as if carefully choosing her next words. "Your exams show no significant anomalies. Your blood pressure, glucose levels, heart function, everything is within normal parameters. It's as if your body simply shut down for a few moments." I tried to process what she was telling me. How was it possible that there was no medical explanation for what had happened? I, who had always believed in the infallibility of science, found myself facing an enigma that defied conventional medical logic. "What does this mean, doctor?" I asked, my voice still weak. "What happens now?" Dr. Monroe took a deep breath before responding. "We're going to keep you under observation for a few more hours. We'll run some additional tests and closely monitor your vital signs. If there are no further incidents, you may be discharged tomorrow, but with the recommendation of rigorous follow-up in the coming weeks." I nodded, still trying to absorb the situation. As Dr. Monroe moved away to give instructions to the nursing staff, I lay there, staring at the hospital's white, sterile ceiling. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely lost. Night fell, bringing with it an unsettling quiet. The sounds of the hospital, the beeping of machines, hurried footsteps in the corridors, distant murmurs of conversations, seemed amplified in the silence of my mind. I tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I was assaulted by a sensation that something important was about to happen. Little did I know that in the coming hours, I would face an experience that would challenge everything I believed to be real and possible. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely refreshed, as if I had slept for days, though I knew I had spent most of the night in restless sleep. The morning nurse entered to perform the routine check of my vital signs and change the intravenous drip. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," she said with a gentle smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Surprisingly well," I replied, still a little confused by the sudden improvement. She nodded, satisfied, and began adjusting the IV. That was when everything changed. As soon as the nurse made the change to the IV, I felt a sharp, intense pain shoot through my arm. like liquid fire being injected into my veins. The pain was so overwhelming that I could barely make a sound. My vision began to blur, and the sounds around me turned into a distant, distorted echo. I saw the panic in the nurse's eyes as she realized something was wrong. She rushed to the door, shouting for help. Within seconds, the room was filled with doctors and nurses. I heard alarmed voices, orders being shouted, but everything seemed to be happening miles away. "We're losing him," someone shouted. Dr. Monroe appeared in my field of vision, her intense eyes fixed on me as she gave orders to the team. I wanted to tell them I was fine, that they didn't need to worry, but my body wasn't responding. It was as if I were trapped inside myself, watching everything unfold as a helpless spectator. Then, I heard a soft voice to my left, whispering, "Everything will be fine. Orion." I tried to turn my head to see who was speaking, but I couldn't move. The voice was comforting, almost familiar, though I couldn't place it. My heart, which had been racing frantically, began to slow down. I heard the sound of the heart monitor slowing, the beeps growing further apart. A feeling of peace began to envelop me, dissolving the fear and confusion. The last thing I saw before my vision went completely dark was Dr. Monroe's anguished face, her hands working frantically on my chest. Then, everything went silent. For a moment, I felt as if I were floating, free from any pain or concern. It was an indescribable feeling of lightness and tranquility. There was no fear, no anxiety, just a serene acceptance of what was happening. And then, I saw it. I saw my own body lying in the hospital bed, the medical team still fighting to bring me back. It was a surreal sight, as if I were watching a scene from a movie. I was there, but at the same time I wasn't. I tried to get their attention, to tell them I was fine, that they didn't need to worry, but my voice produced no sound. It was then that I realized I had crossed a line. I was experiencing something beyond normal human understanding. A soft light began to form around me, wrapping me in a comforting warmth. I felt an irresistible pull toward this light, as if it were calling me home. As I allowed myself to be drawn by this gentle yet powerful force, I was certain that I was about to embark on a journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. As the light enveloped me, I felt myself being carried away from my physical body in the hospital room. It was as if I were traveling through a tunnel, but not a dark and frightening one, as often described in near-death experiences. This tunnel was made of pulsating light, with colors I had never seen before, colors that I can't even describe with words from our earthly vocabulary. The sensation was like being carried by a gentle current, without any effort on my part. There was no fear or anxiety, just a serene curiosity about what was coming next. Time seemed not to exist in this state. I can't tell if the journey lasted seconds or an eternity. As I progressed through the tunnel, I began to hear soft music, a melody that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was the most beautiful music I had ever heard, a perfect harmony that touched every fiber of my being. Along with the music, I sensed a sweet, refreshing aroma, like a mixture of freshly bloomed flowers and crisp mountain air. As I approached what seemed to be the end of the tunnel, the light grew even brighter, but somehow it wasn't blinding. It was as if my eyes, or whatever I was using to perceive at that moment, had adapted to withstand that extraordinary brightness. Then, suddenly, the tunnel ended, and I found myself in a place of indescribable beauty. It was a vast garden, but calling it simply a garden seems an inadequate description for the majesty before me. The colors were more vibrant than anything I had ever seen on Earth. The flowers had shades I didn't even know existed, and each petal seemed to emit its own soft light. The sky above wasn't blue, but a mixture of pastel colors that moved and changed constantly, like an eternal aurora borealis. There was no visible sun, yet everything was perfectly illuminated, as if the light itself emanated from every object, every leaf, every drop of dew. The air was pure and invigorating, filled with a sweet fragrance that vaguely reminded me of jasmine and vanilla, but at the same time, it was completely new and intoxicating. Each breath seemed to fill me not only with air, but with energy and vitality. In the distance, I heard the sound of laughter. Turning in the direction of the sound, I saw a child running through the flowers. As the child drew closer, my heart skipped a beat. I recognized myself, at 6 years old. It was me, exactly as in the old photos my mother cherished so much. The boy, me, ran carefree, his face lit up by pure innocent joy that I had long forgotten. He stopped for a moment, looked directly at me, and smiled. A smile that radiated love and unconditional acceptance. In that instant, I was flooded with memories of my childhood. I remembered moments I had long forgotten, the smell of my grandmother's cookies, the sound of my father's laughter, the gentle touch of my mother's hands as she brushed my hair. These memories came with a wave of emotions, joy, nostalgia, love, and a deep sense of peace. I realized then how much I had changed over the years, how life had hardened me, how I had built barriers around my heart to protect myself from pain and disappointment. Seeing that innocent, carefree version of myself, I understood how much I had lost along the way. I wanted to call out to the boy, to hug him, to tell him that everything would be okay. But before I could, I felt a presence beside me. A presence that emanated an energy of love and wisdom so intense that it almost brought me to my knees. I turned slowly, unsure of what to expect, but feeling that I was about to meet someone or something that would change my life forever. When I turned, I saw a man. He wasn't the traditional image I had of divine figures. No white beard, no long robe, no golden halo. He was an ordinary-looking man, with short brown hair and deep green eyes that seemed to hold all the knowledge of the universe. Despite his simple appearance, there was something about him that emanated an aura of serenity and indescribable wisdom. His presence was both comforting and overwhelming. I felt small before him, but not in an intimidating way. It was more as if I were in the presence of someone who knew me completely and accepted me unconditionally. "Orion, it's good to see you," he said with a welcoming smile. His voice was soft, but carried an authority that reverberated through my entire being. For a moment, I was speechless. Part of me wanted to ask 1,000 questions, while another part knew exactly who he was, even though I had never seen him before. Finally, I managed to formulate a question. "Who are you?" He smiled again, a smile full of understanding and patience. "I am Jesus," he replied simply. In that moment, a wave of emotions washed over me. Surprise, reverence, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of unconditional love. I, who had always been skeptical about spiritual matters, who had based my life on logic and reason, was now standing before a figure that defied everything I thought I knew about reality. But how? Why? I stammered, unable to form coherent thoughts. Jesus extended his hand and gently touched my shoulder. With that simple gesture, I felt a wave of calm envelop me. "You have many questions, Orion. That's natural. Let's walk and talk for a bit." We began walking through the celestial garden. Each step seemed to lead us to a new wonder. Flowers changed color as we passed, trees whispered soft melodies, and streams of crystalline water seemed to flow with liquid light. "You've spent your life seeking answers through logic and science," Jesus began. "And there's much truth and beauty in that pursuit. But there are realities that go beyond what the human mind can comprehend or measure." As we walked, Jesus showed me visions. I saw Earth from space, a blue and green globe spinning gently. I watched the history of humanity unfold before my eyes, moments of great beauty and love interspersed with periods of darkness and suffering. "Humanity has incredible potential," Jesus said, "but it often loses its way, forgetting what is truly important." We saw scenes of war and destruction, but also extraordinary moments of compassion and sacrifice. People risking their lives to save strangers, communities coming together in times of crisis, acts of kindness that changed lives. Love, said Jesus, is the most powerful force in the universe. It is what connects all things, what gives meaning to existence. Many forget this, lost in their own ambitions and fears. As he spoke, I felt myself flooded with that love. It was such an intense, pure sensation that tears began to roll down my face. I realized how much I had been trapped in material concerns, my own ego, and the expectations I and society had placed upon me. But what about suffering? I asked, remembering all the pain and injustices I had witnessed in my life. Why is there so much evil in the world if love is so powerful? Jesus looked at me with compassion. Free will is a precious gift, Orion. Each soul has the power to choose between love and fear, between light and darkness. Suffering often results from those choices, but it can also be a catalyst for growth and understanding. We continued our walk, and Jesus showed me more visions. I saw how small acts of kindness created waves of positive change in the world. I saw how forgiveness had the power to heal deep wounds and transform lives. True strength, Jesus affirmed, is not in power or rigid discipline, but in the ability to love and forgive, including oneself. At that moment, I felt as if a great weight was being lifted from my shoulders. All the expectations I had placed on myself, all the judgments and self-criticism, seemed to melt away in the face of this unconditional love. As I absorbed all this, a question arose in my mind. Why me? Why am I having this experience? Jesus smiled, his eyes shining with profound knowledge. Every soul has its own path, Orion. This experience is part of yours. What you do with it, how it changes your life and the lives of those around you, is up to you. I realized then that this wasn't just a passive experience. It was a call, an invitation to a new way of living and seeing the world. And I knew, deep within my being, that nothing would ever be the same after this encounter. As we continued our walk through the celestial garden, Jesus began to share deeper insights about the nature of reality and the purpose of human existence. Every word he spoke seemed to resonate with a fundamental truth, opening my eyes to aspects of life I had never considered before. Orion, he began, his voice gentle but filled with authority. The reality you know is only a fraction of what truly exists. The universe is infinitely vaster and more complex than the human mind can comprehend. He made a broad gesture with his hand, and suddenly we found ourselves floating in space. Galaxies swirled around us, nebulas exploded in vibrant colors, and stars were born and died in a cosmic ballet of creation and destruction. Every atom, every particle of existence is interconnected, Jesus explained. What happens in one place affects everything else, even if in imperceptible ways. We returned to the garden, and Jesus continued, Humanity has a unique role in this cosmic tapestry. You are co-creators, endowed with the power to shape not only your world, but to influence the very fabric of reality through your thoughts, actions, and, above all, through love. He showed me visions of Earth, highlighting how human actions were pushing the planet to the brink of destruction. I saw forests being cut down, oceans polluted, entire species disappearing. But I also saw people coming together to make a difference, communities planting trees, scientists developing sustainable technologies, young people leading movements for change. Humanity is at a critical point, Jesus said, his face showing a mixture of concern and hope. The choices you make now will determine not only the future of the planet, but the spiritual evolution of the entire species. Then, he spoke to me about divine forgiveness, a concept so vast and deep that it could barely be understood by the human mind. God's forgiveness, he explained, is not just about absolving sins. It is a transformative force that has the power to heal deep wounds, break cycles of negativity, and open paths to new possibilities. I felt myself overwhelmed by this unconditional love and forgiveness, realizing how harshly I had judged myself over the years, carrying guilt and regrets that now seemed insignificant in the light of this cosmic perspective. Many humans live in fear, Jesus continued. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of death. But fear is simply the absence of love. When you learn to live from love, fear loses its power over you. He showed me how fear often guided human decisions, leading to conflicts, wars, and unnecessary suffering. But I also saw inspiring examples of people who chose love in the face of fear, creating positive changes that reverberated through generations. True strength, Jesus reiterated, echoing what he had said before, is not in power over others or in rigid character. It is in the ability to remain open, compassionate, and loving, even in the face of adversity. I realized how much I had confused strength with hardness, how my military discipline and skepticism had built barriers around my heart. I understood that there was a different way to be strong, one that involved vulnerability, compassion, and an openness to the mystery of life. Jesus then spoke about the purpose of life. Every soul comes to earth with lessons to learn and gifts to share, he explained. Your journey is not about reaching some final destination, but about the growth and expansion of consciousness that occurs along the way. He showed me how every challenge, every relationship, every experience, good or bad, offered opportunities for growth and self-discovery. I saw how moments I had considered failures were, in fact, crucial points of learning and transformation. Life on earth is a school, Jesus said, smiling gently, and love is the most important lesson to be learned and practiced. As I absorbed all these revelations, I felt a profound change occurring within me. It was as if veils were being lifted from my eyes, allowing me to see life from an entirely new perspective. I realized that this experience was not just about receiving information, but about a fundamental transformation of my being. Jesus looked at me with infinite compassion. You are beginning to awaken, Orion, but remember, awakening is just the beginning. The real work comes in living these truths day by day, moment by moment. I knew he was right. I knew that returning to my normal life after this would be an enormous challenge. Jesus turned to me with a gentle look of determination in his eyes. Orion, he said, his voice firm yet filled with compassion, it's time for us to talk about your return. I felt a jolt of surprise and, I admit, a bit of reluctance. Return, I asked, looking around at the celestial garden, at the beauty and peace surrounding me. The thought of leaving all of this seemed almost unbearable. Jesus nodded, understanding my hesitation. Your mission on earth is not yet complete, he explained. You still have much to do and to teach. I remained silent for a moment, processing his words. Part of me wanted to protest, to argue that I could do more good by staying in this realm of light and love. But deep down, I knew he was right. How can I make a difference? I asked, suddenly feeling small and inadequate in the face of the immense task that seemed to lie before me. The world is so vast, so full of problems. What can I do alone? Jesus smiled, and in that smile, I saw all the love and confidence he had in me, in all of humanity. Spread love, joy, and understanding, he replied. Live authentically and help others find their way. Remember, Orion, small actions can have great impacts. He made a broad gesture with his hand, and before us appeared images of ordinary people doing seemingly simple things. A man helping a stranger on the street, a woman planting a tree, a teacher inspiring her students, an activist speaking out for the oppressed. Every act of kindness, Jesus explained. Every moment of compassion, every choice made with love creates ripples that spread throughout the universe. Never underestimate the power of a life lived with purpose and love. I began to understand what he meant. It wasn't about performing great heroic deeds or changing the world overnight. It was about living each day with awareness, with compassion, with the intention to make a difference, no matter how small. But how can I hold on to this understanding, this connection, when I return? I asked, fearing that the pressures and distractions of everyday life might cloud everything I had learned here. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, and I felt a wave of strength and confidence flow through me. "Oh, the truth you've experienced here will always be within you," he assured me. "In moments of doubt or fear, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and remember this connection. You are never alone, Orion. Divine love is always with you, within you." He then gave me more specific instructions. Practice meditation and prayer regularly. They will help you maintain your connection to the divine. Be gentle with yourself and others. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Live with gratitude. Seeing the beauty and miracle in every moment, Jesus paused, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that I felt deep within my soul. "And remember, Orion, you were chosen for this experience for a reason. Share your story. There will be those who doubt, who question, but there will also be those who find hope and inspiration in your words." I felt the weight of responsibility, but also a sense of purpose and determination growing inside me. I knew my life would never be the same, that I had been fundamentally transformed by this experience. Touching my forehead gently. "Go now, with love and blessings. Always remember, you are loved beyond measure, and you have the power to make a difference." I felt an intense light begin to envelop me, and I realized I was being pulled back into my body, back to my earthly life. But this time there was no fear. There was only gratitude, love, and an unshakable determination to fully live out the mission entrusted to me. The transition back into my body was less smooth than the journey there. It felt as though I was being pulled through a whirlpool of sensations and emotions. The vivid colors and peace of the celestial realm gave way to the harsh, noisy reality of the hospital. The first thing I noticed was the sound, the constant beeping of machines, hurried voices, the hum of electricity. Then came the physical sensation, the stiffness of the hospital bed beneath my back, the prick of the IV needle in my arm, the weight of my own body, which felt strangely heavy after the lightness I had experienced. I slowly opened my eyes, blinking against the fluorescent lights overhead. Dr. Monroe's face came into view, her eyes wide with surprise and relief. "He's back," she exclaimed, quickly turning to the medical team. "Vitals are stabilizing." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and rough. "Doctor..." Monroe noticed my struggle and quickly brought a cup of water with a straw. "Slowly," she instructed, as I drank eagerly. "You gave us quite a scare, Lieutenant Blackwood." After a few sips, I finally managed to speak. How long?" My voice came out hoarse and weak. "Doctor..." Monroe hesitated for a moment before answering. "You were in cardiac arrest for almost 5 minutes. Honestly, we didn't think we'd be able to bring you back." 5 minutes. It seemed impossible. The experience I had lived felt like it had lasted an eternity. How could all that knowledge, all those revelations have occurred in just 5 minutes? In the days that followed, I underwent a series of tests and exams. The doctors were baffled by my rapid recovery and by the absence of any brain damage from the lack of oxygen during the cardiac arrest. From a medical standpoint, I was a walking miracle. But I knew that the real miracle was not my physical recovery, but the internal transformation I had experienced. As I lay in that hospital bed, replaying every detail of my spiritual journey, I felt a deep shift in my perception of the world and my place in it. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds richer, each breath a precious gift. I found myself observing the people around me, nurses, doctors, other patients, with a new sense of connection and compassion. Each of them, I now realized, carried within them that same divine spark I had experienced. When I was finally discharged from the hospital, a week after my miracle, I stepped out into the world with new eyes. The Seattle sky, usually gray and oppressive to me, now seemed full of nuances and beauty. The fresh air in my lungs felt like a blessing, each breath an affirmation of life. I returned home, to the apartment that had once felt like just a place to sleep between work shifts. Now, every object seemed to tell a story, every photograph on the wall a reminder of the connections and relationships that gave my life meaning. I sat in my favorite chair, letting the reality of my experience truly sink in. I had died. I had met Jesus. I had glimpsed the secrets of the universe and the purpose of human existence. And now, here I was, back in the normal world, with the mission to live and share what I had learned. The magnitude of that responsibility was both daunting and exhilarating. How could I even begin to explain to others what I had experienced? How could I translate those cosmic truths into the language of everyday life? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and remembered Jesus' words, "You are never alone." I felt that divine connection still alive within me, a thread of light linking my heart to the heart of the universe. In that moment, I made a promise to myself and to the divine. I would live each day with purpose, with love, with the intention of making a difference. It wouldn't be easy, I knew. There would be challenges, doubts, moments of weakness. But now I had a deeper understanding, a broader perspective. My journey back to the real world was just beginning, and I was determined to make every moment count. The days and weeks following my near-death experience were an emotional roller coaster filled with discoveries. Each morning, I woke up with a mix of gratitude for this second chance at life and an almost overwhelming sense of responsibility. How could I honor what I had experienced? How could I translate those cosmic truths into concrete actions in my daily life? The first big change came with my decision to retire from the Air Force. It wasn't an easy choice. The military career had been my life for so long, shaping my identity in so many ways. But deep in my heart, I knew that my path now followed a different direction. When I communicated my decision to my superior, Colonel James Hawkins, he looked at me with a mix of surprise and concern. "Are you sure about this, Blackwood? You have a brilliant career ahead of you." I nodded, feeling an inner peace that confirmed my choice. "I'm sure, sir. It's time to follow a new path." In the months that followed, I dove into a journey of self-discovery and reinvention. I began exploring spiritual practices that I would have previously dismissed as New Age nonsense. Meditation, yoga, philosophical studies, each new experience seemed to open new doors of understanding, connecting me more deeply with the transcendent experience that had changed my life. But it wasn't just about spiritual practices. I remembered Jesus' words about living authentically and helping others. I began volunteering at homeless shelters and mentoring programs for at-risk youth. Every interaction, every human connection, seemed like an opportunity to share a bit of the unconditional love I had experienced. One day, while working at the shelter, I met Elena, a dedicated social worker with kind eyes and a contagious smile. Over the weeks, we grew closer, sharing stories and dreams. When I finally gathered the courage to tell her about my near-death experience, I was surprised by her reaction. "You know," she said, her eyes shining with a mix of fascination and understanding, "I've always believed there's more to life than what we can see or touch. Your story, it resonates with something deep inside me." That conversation was the beginning of a relationship that brought a new dimension of love and partnership into my life. With Elena, I found someone who not only accepted my new perspective on life, but also challenged me to live it more fully every day. But not everyone in my life was as receptive. When I shared my experience with my old friend Lucas Harper, he reacted with skepticism. "Look, Orion," he said, frowning, "I'm not saying you're lying, but you went through serious trauma. The brain does strange things in extreme situations." His reaction initially hurt me, but I soon realized it was an opportunity to practice the understanding and compassion I had learned. "I understand your skepticism, Lucas Iger," I replied calmly. "I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you to watch how my life is changing and draw your own conclusions. Over time, even Lucas began to notice the positive changes in my life. He commented on how I seemed more relaxed, more present, more willing to laugh and enjoy the small moments. As I opened myself to new experiences, I discovered talents and passions I never knew I had. I began taking dance lessons, discovering pure joy in expressing myself through movement. I ventured into stand-up comedy, using humor to bring light and reflection into people's lives. Photography became a passion, allowing me to capture and share the beauty I now saw in every moment. One day, during a particularly deep meditation session, I felt an intense energy in my hands. When I opened them, I noticed marks that hadn't been there before, tiny points of light that seemed to glow from within my skin. At first, I was frightened, but then I remembered Jesus, words about unique gifts and purposes. In the months that followed, I discovered that I had developed a sensitivity that allowed me to feel the emotions and pain of those around me. Sometimes, by touching someone, I could even ease their physical or emotional suffering. It was a powerful gift, but also a great responsibility. I remembered Jesus' warning to take care of myself while helping others. With the encouragement of Dr. Monroe, who had become a friend and mentor, I began exploring ways to use this gift responsibly. I started working with therapists and doctors, offering a holistic approach to healing that combined traditional medicine with the spiritual energy that now flowed through me. As my new life unfolded, I never forgot the greater purpose that had been entrusted to me. I began giving talks about my experience, sharing the lessons I had learned about love, forgiveness, and the interconnectedness of all things. To my surprise, people responded with an openness and enthusiasm I hadn't expected. Of course, there were skeptics and critics. Some accused me of being crazy or a fraud, but I had learned not to let the fear of others' opinions stop me from living my truth. I responded to the criticism with compassion and understanding, reminding myself that every person is on their own journey of discovery. As the years passed, I saw the impact of my actions spreading like ripples in a pond. People who had attended my talks or read about my story began making changes in their own lives. I received letters from strangers telling me how they had found hope and purpose through my testimony. Elena and I got married and started our own family, raising our children with the values of love, compassion, and spiritual awareness that we had embraced. Watching them grow with an innate understanding of the interconnectedness of all things was a constant source of joy and inspiration. Today, years after that fateful morning in Seattle, I look back and see how every moment, every choice, every challenge was part of a larger journey. The near-death experience I had wasn't an end, but a beginning. The beginning of a life lived with purpose, love, and a deep connection to the divine. I know my journey is far from over. Each day brings new opportunities to grow, learn, and make a difference. Sometimes, when I close my eyes and take a deep breath, I can still feel that celestial light, hear Jesus' gentle voice, reminding me of the fundamental truth I discovered. We are all part of something greater, connected by a love that transcends our human understanding. And each of us has the power to make a difference, to spread light in a world that often seems dark. This is my story, my testimony, and my hope is that, in some way, it may touch your heart and remind you of the truth that resides within you too. Because, in the end, we are all travelers on this incredible journey called life, all seeking our way back home to the love that is the source of everything. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to watch every new video and help us spread this message to more people. See you next time.